distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Web3 event dedicated to the ICT industry and as well as creative. This event is organized by the Future Technology Activity Project, funded by USAID and Sweden, but also in partnership with Yep Moldova and some other nice organizations that we have been working with to organize this. And big thank you to the Zuckerberg Institute, the Possible Zone, Meta Refuge, and the Hack Accelerator. As I was mentioning, this event is dedicated to the ICT industry and the creative. So here in the room we have representatives from IT companies in Moldova, such as Simple, Sendava, and some others that I have recognized among you. But also we have the creative industry that is also important because we have the topic of NFTs and the digital art that is also part of the Web3 technology. So this is why we have brought all of you together to actually put Moldova on the map, on the Web3 map, along the other countries, such as, for example, Estonia, who is already committed to implement Web3 technologies both in the government and as well as the industry. Even the government of Estonia mentioned that they are very thrilled and eager to adopt this new technology. They might still wait for a little bit for it to get standardized, to get certificates and other bureaucratic stuff that they would need. But however, the private sector of Estonia is already on board with a few startups that have embraced technology, Web3 technology, to actually make their businesses and offer possibilities for decentralizations for their users. And I'm happy to have here guests from various organizations, and I would like to first give the floor to the ambassador of the United States to have a welcome remark for you. Mr. Longstone, please.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, and especially the second day of this remarkable series of events focused on Web3. I've got to look at my list because we have so many great partners that you just mentioned a couple, but USAID, the government of Sweden, the Core Association, MediaCore and ArtCore, Yep, Moldova, the Hug Accelerator, Meta Refuge, and the Possible Zone. And they're all the people who put together this exciting week for us. So we're very, very grateful to everyone. You know, the IT sector here is really what is driving, in many ways, I think, the excitement in this country, in this room. IT exports grew 47% from 20 to 21. They now make up 11% of all of Moldova's exports. And that growth's continuing, and that's in spite of some of the current difficulties that people are facing. But that's not a given, and you never know if the trajectory will stop. You don't want it to stop. And that's exactly why we're having this kind of a meeting today, this kind of two-day event that will hopefully make sure that we keep up when we think about innovation, reinvention, progression for companies to remain relevant and competitive on the global stage. So the enthusiasm is already here. I can feel it. I think when we talk about what's next for the internet, what's next for the tech industry, partnerships like this one, the US, Moldova, Sweden, IT, Createch, creative companies, I think you are all the ones who are going to drive continued innovation and competition. So I'm excited to hear more about the opportunities, the uses for Web3, the challenges, and how it can be a driver for economic and social change. So Moldova, we all know it as a small country with a big heart, but you also are a country with the tech skills, the creative minds, and the communities that we need to drive IT innovation going forward. So thanks very much for having me, and I'll get out of the way and let the excitement begin. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Ambassador. As I was mentioning, even though the government still might be reluctant to adopt this kind of new technologies that are not yet certified or standardized, it is important to actually have them on board in this discussion. And also, this event was actually possible through a partnership that we have with the government of the Republic of Moldova. And we are happy to have here Ms. Olga Tumuruk, who is the director of the e-government agency in Moldova. and I would like to give the floor to you, Ms.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, on behalf of Mr. Deputy Prime Minister for Digitalization, Yuri Turcanu, and all digitalization team of the government, I would like to greet you and thank you for supporting and contributing to the series of events dedicated to Web3 and how we can innovate and change, already design the future in Web3 era. It is indeed a new topic for our society, but definitely not for our community of IT professionals. Thus, a framework for in-depth discussions on how we can leverage on this for our common benefit are of a true added value. As a government, we are highly interested how using Web3 opportunities we could ensure more trust in government digital solution, what concrete use cases could be piloted using advanced technologies that are empowered by Web3, so that our final users, the citizens, feel more confident and trustful in their digital journey when interacting with the government or between them using the digital means offered by the government. One of the major particularities of this new version of web that needs to be exploited is the enhanced control over data protection, of personal data. In our view, we must capitalize on this in order to enable our citizens to have control and decision power over their data, balancing it with data portability, one of the key features of Web3. As already mentioned, we are keen to see what use cases could be implemented in Moldova in order to understand how we can contribute to support not only the learning process, but also implementing these scenarios in real life. Let me congratulate you once again and for this event, for bringing in Moldova such valuable speakers and personalities, and wish you a very productive event, discussions, and inspiring networking sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga, for the welcoming remarks. So, this being said, we are ready to kick off the discussion event, as we may say it is, because it is an event where we want to explore what is Web3, what are the risks, what are the advantages, what kind of challenges can we face, but also we want to look at what there is there for Moldova, what kind of technologies that Web3 can bring. We can use here to improve different areas in Moldova, like education, health, or many others that are important for our society. And for this, in order to have a meaningful discussion, we have a few speakers that you are going to meet further during the event. But for now, I want to invite Michael Lidig. Michael, please join me on stage. Michael is actually the man behind, together with Meg, behind this event, and I would like to thank you a lot for your involvement and making this possible. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great. I'm really grateful to be here. So I'm going to use this thing called a clicker, and I promise you I'm going to try to stay as engaged as possible and tell you a lot of stories. So that's me. You're going to see, we're going to talk a lot about digital avatars today and the new internet that's being born in front of us, called Web3. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Michael Lidig. I'm the Director of Creative Programming at Hug Studios, where I lead and advise brands, projects, creators, and how to use Web3 and how to go more directly to their audiences. I'm also the co-founder of Zuckerberg Institute. But at the core of what I do is I'm a creative. And my mission is to create spaces for myself and others to be seen, to be heard, and to belong. And that's the reason I'm here today. Because I believe Moldovans, everyone in this room, all of you, belong here. You belong as a part of this new internet. And so I want to start with a moment of gratitude. I want to have gratitude for Meg Reardon, who's my partner in this, from Possible Zone, who's an incredible educator. I want to have gratitude for USAID, for the ambassador, for the State Department. Everything in my life points back to the State Department and why I'm here. I was a Fulbrighter. I've worked in refugee camps, and it's all due to the State Department. I'm also wanted to share gratitude for my colleagues in Web3 at Hug Studios. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and those giants are incredible. I also want to share gratitude for all of my colleagues at Moldova and the Moldovan government. And then ultimately, I want to share gratitude for all of you that showed up today. You're here. Yeah, right? Which brings me to my first point. Why? Why did you come here? Why are you here? Think about it for a moment. Maybe something interests you about these words, metaverse, DeFi, DAOs, NFTs, right? All these statements, often to me, they're a bit intimidating, right? I don't know what they mean. What is a non-fungible token? I can't even explain that to my mom, let alone someone else. And so, as someone who's a creative myself, I believe we're on the edge of a creative renaissance. And so my hope today is that through my own storytelling, I can in some way translate some of these concepts to you so that by the end of today, you can walk away and you can go, oh, that's me. Oh, I see myself in that. Because you belong here. You belong here. And so, with your permission, I'd like to go back almost to the point when I first started my own encounter with the internet, right? I'm gonna date myself a little bit here. I'm gonna go back to 1993. I was a young 8-year-old in Orlando, Florida. And this was, for me, my first encounter with what I'm gonna define as Web 1, right? What's Web 1? What does that mean, Web 1? Well, for me, it was this video game called Trade Wars. And I would call up on my little modem, if y'all remember modems, and there was this thing called a 14.4 kilobytes per second, right? Or a 56K modem, and it would make this sound, right? Do you all remember that? Right? And I would call and I would get into this bulletin board system, and I would play this game. And it was Trade Wars, and I was hooked. And sometimes I would call and it would be busy, and it was clunky, and it would cut me off because my mom would pick up the phone, and I'm like, Mom, I'm on the computer, right? We've all been there. So this is ultimately what becomes Web 1, which I'm going to call the information economy, right? The information economy. This is the first time you could go to a website, shocker, and actually get the news. This disrupted a whole media industry in this way. And I've actually, as time has gone on, I've been able to talk to individuals as they face this moment. And there's going to be a theme I'm going to talk a lot about today, which is disruption and the opportunity that happens in disruption. So Web 1, information economy, I go to a website, right? This starts to evolve over the next few years. I go to college. I start playing on this thing called AIM, AOL Instant Messenger, if anyone ever encountered something like that. This is a way I could chat with people. And then comes my first profile photo. Everyone in this room has a first profile photo on Facebook, and I know it would embarrass you to put it up here, so I thought I would embarrass myself. Here's my first profile photo. This is 2006. So here I am. Now, all of that information economy starts to become social, and it starts to evolve into these platforms, right? I'll call it the platform economy, right? So what these do is, like, for the first time ever, think about this, this is only 15 years ago, friends. 15 years ago, I could now start to interact across borders. So I remember I talked about, I did a Fulbright, right? I lived in Mongolia. Suddenly all my friends would be like, Bayır Horgi, Michael, you know, like, congratulations, like, happy birthday. Suddenly I was connecting across the world. This is brand new. This is nothing that we could do. And this was only 15 years ago. And we had these platforms developed, Google, Facebook, Twitter, right? And what I'll call them as, they were centralized. And what I mean by that is all the information was in one area, right? It was in a centralized area. And we understand this, right? That if all that data went away, all my Facebook photos would go away, right? If all that data went away, all your Facebook photos would go away, your Google, your information. That data starts to be incorporated of how you interact on the internet. And we all know about this, right? And so over the last 10 years, there's this thing that pops up, and it's called crypto. Anyone heard of crypto? Right? Raise your hand if you've heard of crypto, right? Bitcoin, right? Right? This is around I start to hear this word around 2014, 2013, 2012. I think, what is that? I don't know what that is. But it's a movement toward what I'm going to call decentralization. Decentralization, right? And then in 2017, I get the guts, and I have to like do 10, 12 steps, and I buy my first crypto, right? Cryptocurrency. And what ends up happening is now we're in this moment of an emerging Web3. And so I thought I would share with you 3 aha moments I had about, oh, that's Web3. And it started during the pandemic, right? So remember where you were the first day of the pandemic, right? Remember how much time you spent on virtual meetings before the pandemic, right? Now think about how much time you're spending on virtual meetings. Think about how much time you're spending on your phone. Different, right? For me, before the pandemic, I think I would probably have spent per week maybe 5, 6 hours on a virtual meeting. Now, I spend my entire day on a virtual meetings. Everything I'm doing is virtual. And so I had this aha moment when I started having these Zoom rooms, and I said, oh my gosh, this is the metaverse. Stay with me for a moment. Because right now, when you think of the metaverse, right, do you think of video games? You think of virtual reality? You think of this new world? I'm here to tell you that you're in the metaverse right now. You're in the metaverse right now because our digital lives are slowly overtaking our physical lives. And they're starting to go like this. And some of you may feel that there's a sense of oncoming dystopia because of that, and that makes total sense. I think we all feel that because of stories. But there's also an opportunity here. There is an opportunity in disruption. What do you do? There is no new normal, right? We're not going to go back to the old ways. And so I saw this trend happening. Notice in my little team meeting with these amazing human beings, my team, who I love dearly, we started doing these digital versions of ourselves because we wanted to make ourselves look a little cooler, right? I would look on the screen and I'm like, oh, I look so, ugh. Oh, I'm going to put a pirate hat on. I'm going to put a virtual, who has virtual backgrounds? And if you have a virtual background, raise your hand, right? Right, you're starting to kind of go, interesting. I want to, in some ways, represent myself digitally differently. And you're going to see this trend is starting to happen over time. So that was my first aha moment. I was like, oh my gosh, we're in the metaverse right now. And then this little thing came into my life. That's my first NFT. Who's heard of an NFT? Raise your hand. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have heard of NFTs. So I bought this last year. I probably paid for this little JPEG probably $150. And you're thinking, yes, this person's crazy on this stage. Why did he spend that much money on that little JPEG when I could just save it with my phone? But there's something different going on here. I own that. I own that piece of art. And that piece of art became my digital identity for the past 6 months. So I changed my social media photo to that avatar. Isn't that crazy? Why? Well, because that made me feel a sense of belonging. It made me feel like that represented a value of this group called the Curious Addies. It's a NFT project group. And the cool thing about this is also I was able to get into education courses just by validating that I have this. What really started to happen is what's called utility. We'll talk more about that. This had utility beyond just being a picture. But most importantly, the thing I want you to walk away with this is that notice that artists and creatives suddenly pushed this kind of Web3 forward, right? It was through art. It was through storytelling. And this is a theme that I think is really interesting as a creative, and as I know there's a lot of creatives in this room, that we're on the edge of a renaissance here. So that was my second aha moment. Then I had my third aha moment. So for the past 12 years, I've worked with refugees on the border of Somalia. I lived in a refugee camp for the better part of a year during a famine in 2011, and I saw the power of education, right? I saw the power when education is not a right, it's a privilege, what someone would do for a certificate. Has anyone had this experience where I work a lot with refugees, right? And we would work for 6 months, and I would be like, what did you learn? They're like, do I get a certificate? It was very important to them. And so this past year, I run a program still in Kenya with refugees, and I was going to give them a certificate. I thought to myself, wait a minute, Michael, how can you use Web3 tools to share with them what you're doing? So what I did is I minted the certificate on the blockchain, and I handed them a digital record of their education. Because all my friends here, many of these are urban refugees, but Abdi Rashid in the back, who doesn't have the certificate, he's been my friend for 12 years. He's been a refugee, lived in the refugee camp for 20 years of his life. All of his education was in a small binder in his little house, and it could have been washed away by floods at any time. All of the records of who he was, of what he represented, gone in a moment. And so I thought to myself, this is powerful, that this record of trust on a blockchain verified, while it's very simple what I did, is the beginning of what's going to be called on-chain reputation staking and digital diplomas. We'll talk a lot about that a little bit later with our panel. That was my third aha moment. And I realized, oh my gosh, we're in the ownership economy. We're in a moment where we can, together as collectives, as communities, co-own things. That's really powerful because it's verified on a blockchain, on a decentralized system, right? And so the question I want to pose to you is, what do you want to co-own in this room? You want to own your data? Do you want to own a piece of land? Do you want to own a company? Do you want to own, I work a lot with governments right now, and I'm asking, how do we own ideas together? What happens with Web3 is that suddenly I can become an owner of something. I remember that digital identity, that avatar? Look at me, I represent this. Suddenly it's verifiable beyond me. That's really powerful. Because actually, as we understand, ownership is relational, right? It's about belonging. It's about who I am. And so I want to now kind of walk through what, as I'm seeing this evolution of what Web3 is doing, is that we're very early in this, right? So right when Web3 started to emerge, we saw with NFTs this kind of idea of membership, right? Remember I had that access, that utility? I could get access to this special group through this NFT. That was interesting. People are starting to experiment in that way. They started to experiment with IP rights. So you could own IP rights, and you could go make money off of that piece of art that we co-own together. Really fascinating. And then this rise of what I'm calling profile pictures. Remember I told you I changed my avatar, right? That there's this sense of I want to be someone. I want to be seen as someone, as an innovator. This is now evolving towards brands are now starting to experiment. We've seen this, right? We've seen brands start to experiment in Web3 because they're starting to dip their toe into this. And then finally, we have storytelling, which is where my heart is. people are starting to decentralize the way they tell stories. Suddenly, anyone in this room can become a storyteller and become a writer for a big Hollywood TV show. In fact, everyone in this room can help form and think about the way we tell stories and be a co-owner in that story. That's incredible, right? Like suddenly we are all a part of telling a collective story in a decentralized way. So how will this continue to evolve? I just want to do this, we're going to talk a lot about this over the hackathon in the next few days, but I want to spark some ideas for you. One, loyalty. We're going to see that brands, because now they can speak more directly to their consumers, they're going to reward those consumers through tokens, they're going to reward them through special merchandise, right? It's going to increase this idea and this belief that I'm a part of something. It's going to go through access. Everyone in this room can now, and I'm going to tell you this over and over and over again, you have access to some of the leading minds in Web3 at your fingertips. And by the end of this weekend, I will introduce you to them. You're going to meet one of them in the next 10 minutes who is literally on the leading edge of data and data privacy and soul-bound tokens. Identity, right? We were talking about governance, about data privacy. Who am I? What's represented? Because the thing about Web3, it's all visible, right? So how do I want to represent myself on the blockchain? These are questions that I want you to kind of really think about, but it ultimately, to me, comes back to belonging. Belonging. There's a way that, because it's verified on this decentralized system, I go, oh, like my friend G back there, G's like me. I would have never met G in my life. I never would have met Alex, who you're going to hear, or Dan, you're going to hear later, but I met them through Web3, and I feel like I belong, and we're like each other, but it's across borders. And so really, I think we're at the creator economy. We're on a creative renaissance. We're on the edge of it. And we're going to see that creators are going to be able to go more directly to their consumers because there's no intermediary in between anymore. There's no bigger platform that's going to take a percentage. And this is huge. This is massive. This is a revolution. And so over the next few days, we're going to talk about a lot of the problems here, right? It's complex. I don't know what these words mean. What is data? What is privacy? What do I want to have visible? What do I don't want to have visible? And all of those exist. I don't know where to turn. Who is this? But I just want to say we're very early. And it's helpful for me because I have the privilege of working with people who built social media. And when they turn to me and they say, this is like year one of social media, think of that first profile photo. Think of where we are now, which ultimately becomes a responsibility to why we're here. Because I'm here because I want to know what you think. I'm here because I believe you have the solution. I'm here because I don't have all the answers. In fact, all the people I work with, nobody really knows the answer. But we're looking for people like you to be a part of this. And when I stand in front of a student from Moldova, which I did yesterday, and I tell them, you don't have to leave your country anymore. There are a bunch of people waiting for you, wanting to work with you, wanting to be a part of you, wanting to learn with you, wanting to collaborate with you. And that is literally just at our fingertips. And so I say to you, the reason I'm here is because I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to stop talking because one of the things I like to do is I like to listen. So I'm going to bring up some chairs up here, and we're going to transition to a panel discussion, particularly around what I think is one of the most interesting things in Web3 happening right now, which is this notion of digital identity and digital privacy. So we're going to bring on two wonderful human beings from the Moldovan side. And then I'm going to virtually bring in my friend Shrey Jain. And so if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read their bios for a moment, and then we'll just jump right into questions and thoughts with them. So Shrey Jain. Shrey Jain is a Web3 researcher at Microsoft. His research focuses on the coordination and identity. He's also a technical advisor to product teams at Microsoft and its partners on the best way to explore Web3 incubations. He works under Glenn Weil and York Rhodes, collaborating with key researchers like Vitalik Buterin, who's the founder of Ethereum. Previously, he launched large-scale healthcare projects during COVID-19, particularly in Somalia and Canada. Vlad Manuel is a senior digital government consultant. Vlad served as the deputy director at the e-government agency of Moldova, where he led the public service modernization program, including but not limited to the World Bank-funded project, Modernization of Government Services Project. Prior to that, he managed the implementation of 15 e-services under the Moldovan government. And finally, we have Eugen Boyko, who's a creative. Eugen Boyko is a leading expert in the field and runs one of the most prominent creative businesses in Moldova, NRG Media and Publicis Moldova. So let's give a round of applause for those wonderful panelists. They're coming. Keep applauding. And we have a microphone for you all. Hey, Michael.
Great meeting you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Hey, Vlad. Oh, one of you. We'll have a mic here. And then we'll get Shrey up there. Hey, Shrey.
Hey, everyone.
Nice to hear you. Let's see if we can get his volume up a little bit. Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome, Shrey, virtually. Where are you calling in from, Shrey?
I'm in Toronto, Canada right now.
Toronto, Canada. And so I'd love to actually start with you, Shrey, because it's always great to start with the virtual guest. Can you share a little bit about your background and your interest in digital identity as part of Radical Exchange?
For sure. I think of the many things one can work on to promote human flourishing, there's things you can make a meal for a friend, you can create intelligent systems to promote abundance in the world with AI, but also we can create systems that promote pluralism. And it's one of the things that I think is quite important when it comes to building socio-technical systems particularly. And so what does pluralism mean? To me, it means cooperating across social differences. And so even that word in itself, it can mean many things. And so cooperation and coordination mean two different things. Cooperation means I'm taking action simultaneously with a set of people, and I understand the payoffs that come with that action. Whereas coordination just means I take action and there's no understanding of these payoffs that come out of that. And so the more that we can get multiple people, multiple sets of people from different types of social groups to act mutually beneficially with one another, the more good we anticipate to see. And so I think when it comes back to digital identity, we can't cooperate across social differences unless we can know who these differences are. So who are we cooperating with? Are we cooperating with one individual? Are we cooperating with a set of individuals? How do we identify who are these set of people? It's even identifying who one person is digitally is a challenging problem. Do we know that this account is in fact a unique human being? How do we identify a group of people? How do we identify a school? Who goes to that school? A government agency? How do we create boundaries around this set of people so that we can cooperate across these different contexts in a much richer way? And so I think when it comes to why that ties back to digital identity, it's this very complex problem of how we identify these sets of people to then be able to appropriately coordinate amongst one another. Yeah.
And I'm just going to dig a little further because you write a lot about decentralized identity and pluralism. So can you just share a little bit of background? What does it mean to have decentralized identity and how that shows up in your work?
Sure. So I think to give some context here, historically, both in the physical world, and then I'll talk about the digital. So in the physical world, the way we communicate with one another has progressed throughout time. My chronological order of this might be wrong, but let's say I wanted to communicate a message orally with someone, and that person was across the able to physically go and talk to that person. So I might have a messenger I tell this message to that would then go and communicate it with someone else. Now I'm going to assume two things when I tell this person my message. It's one, that they're not going to share this message with anyone else, and two, that message will be told in full. And then you could talk about what happened when people started to write. Well, with writing, you solve one of these axes much better. You're able to know whatever's on this piece of paper gets told in full, but I still lack some privacy guarantees on that information. I don't know who sees it, I don't know who has access to it, etc. And then what's interesting is through history, the time it took for the envelope to be used to wrap these messages improved privacy a lot, but the envelope wasn't initially created for these privacy preserving techniques for communication. It was much later that we realized it could be used for things beyond sending gifts to one another. And then I'll skip a couple things like the radio, the telegraph, and we get to internet today with the ways we communicate. And we've progressed to centralized, federated, and decentralized approaches. And so I'll briefly explain that so that we get much richer context of what it means to be a decentralized identity. A centralized identity is one where I log into an account. Let's say I have a company, Shrey's business, and I have to mandate that every customer has their own unique username and password for my account. And I'm the one managing the registry of all these different people on my servers. This is what's known as a centralized identity. And we can see why this problem scales as the number of applications that humans interact with scales as well, because I don't want to have to manage all my usernames and passwords. And this is why a lot of people use the same passwords for many of their different accounts. It's because there's just so many accounts that we use. And then we move to more federated approaches, which is using things like OpenID or OAuth. And it's like signing in with Google, signing in with Facebook, signing in with Microsoft. And we get to start to aggregate this one identity profile that we've created with one institution, and it lets us access all these different types of platforms and experiences while not having to manage all these different usernames and passwords. We do this with one account or a set of smaller accounts. But we still have this challenge of, I don't want my identity to be reliant on these institutions. I want to be the one who manages my identity. And so now we move to more decentralized approaches where I am the steward of my identity if I choose to go with a non-custodial solution. And custodial just means that I am taking full control of that identity. And now I can choose where to port it, and I can do it with one single username and private key that I manage. And so now there's this suite of problems that I'm happy to talk more about within decentralized identity. What are the things that we can do? What are the challenges that we're facing? And how can we move forward?
Can we give a round of applause for Shrey for explaining that so effectively? It's really remarkable. You know, I want to go to Vlad now. So Vlad, because of your experience in digital identity, particularly on the Moldovan side over the past 15 years, what are the problems that we need to identify before we go further into this world of decentralization?
Yes. Does it work?
Yes.
When our team joined the newly founded the Governance Center back in 2011, what we wanted to achieve basically is give people like Eugene the liberty to create instead of staying in line to obtain services or to fill in forms or to pay taxes. So when you think about it, everything you do with state has to rely on who you are in that centralized repository that we call the Register of Population. So as you try to move from the physical world into the digital, you need to have a digital, what we call a digital legal authoritative identity that is linked to your physical identity. And you need to do it in a trusted manner so that anything that you transact with the government online, it has a legal value behind it. So basically that's what took quite a bit of our time. Finding the right tools and technologies and means for people to be able to identify themselves online and benefit of electronic services and be able to pay their taxes safely and securely. So that's what the importance of digital identity in the e-governance world, to say so.
And Eugene, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about how you process digital identity, both as a creative, as a creator, and as a Moldovan, so that when we go back to Shrey, we can kind of in some way encapsulate this whole conversation.
Yeah, well, I'm coming from the creative sector, of course, and the thing that never stops to amaze me is the situation when I'm telling my fellow Moldovans that, do you know that we have a Moldovan who happens to be one of the top 100 DJs in the world? Or do you know that we have a couple of young Moldovans that run a music label that happens to be #1? So there is a certain disruption between the achievements of people that are here and their actual Moldovan identity. So I think one of the precious achievements that we could reach is, you know, letting people in Moldova know that this is also part of their identity. You know, these achievements, they validate us as Moldovans, that they validate us as creatives. And I think one of the biggest promises of Web3, which is, tokenization of everything, and increasing the velocity of transactions, increasing the velocity of connections we make in the world. I hope this is going to help us put Moldovans on the map from the creative perspective. And we would all in the country know that there are Moldovans creating this and that, but also the whole world will know about us.
Round of applause for that statement. So, going back to you, Shrey, we're talking about this problem of validation in this decentralized moment. So, what are some of the problems that come about in implementing that validation across decentral networks?
Yeah, I think there's 4 key problems that we outlined in our recent paper that I think are still persistent. In decentralized networks, the first is you need to make sure your system works with the systems you want to operate with. And what that means for identity context is that you can work with smart contracts or the set of tools that Web3 operates on. And so this problem boils down to what's called correct execution of code. Can our systems work? The second is, can we, in many governance or academic credential contexts that we were talking about before, can we make sure that the system is censorship resistant? So that if I'm willing to pay a high enough fee, or I'm willing to put a claim on this set of transactions, I am able to process that transaction if I so choose. And this is a problem with identities, because when we think about what's called an oracle, so if you're not familiar with what an oracle is you can think of this highway that takes data that lives off of a blockchain and brings it onto a blockchain. And what's interesting is, like, when we think about, let's talk about the price of Ethereum. If the price of Ethereum lives in this off-chain finance network and we want to bring it on-chain, someone has to say, hey, the price of Ethereum at this exact second is this price. And the reason why that's really easy to do is because that data is readily available. People can go and look up the price of Ethereum quite easily. It's not very subjective. It's like the price of Ethereum is the price of Ethereum. And so it's quite easy to bring on-chain and dispute if there's mistakes. The challenge becomes with identity data is it's not readily available. It's highly unique to each person, and therefore it's very subjective. And so if I put data on-chain that's false, it's hard to dispute quickly and resolve in a way that is not going to affect the networks beyond that. The other one is coercion resistance. It's like, if I want to know what someone else voted or if they voted at all, I should not be able to do that. And the final one is just making sure that we have these private systems as well. And so, the one I explained before is privacy. And the final one is coercion resistance, is that I should not be able to prove what I voted, even if someone else wants me to. And I think these 4 properties are not yet well achieved in decentralized identity solutions, whether it be with NFTs, verifiable credentials, or DIDs, which are more technical substrates that are currently being used for identities. And we're trying to push in different projects, whether it's our teams or others, in how we can build and solve those 4 properties together.
It's amazing, Shrey, what you're doing. And actually, I want to go to Vlad, because as we hear what Shrey is doing, which is really where the future is going to be, we're pushing toward these decentralized networks, and there are problems of as just to repeat what Shrey said, what's on chain? How do I validate that there is an amazing DJ here that lives in Moldova? Who says that that's the truth, right? I think, Vlad, because you've been working in a centralized system, what do you see as we kind of step into this, into these networks, and what are the kind of steps that need to go about in order to actually achieve what Shrey is talking about?
I think you need trust first of all to ensure trust, because one moment you're 100 in the top 100, the second minute you're out of that top 100. So you need to be able to validate that's true, or whether you have a credential. It can be valid now and maybe expire tomorrow. So or I may not have a diploma today, or I may have it tomorrow. So the issue of trust and having the data readily available when you need it, I think it's the bridge to what Shrey says. So having a bridge like Oracle, to paraphrase Shrey, that would take data from authoritative sources, which mostly are centralized at the moment, and put it on chain where it can be decentralized, it would be maybe a step in the right direction.
And Eugene, as you think about that as a creative, I really want to make it personal to say, like, what do you want to have on chain what do you not want to have off-chain? Like, so how do you deal with that on the personal level as a creative?
You know, what got my attention most from what Shrey has just mentioned as the promises of Web3 is the new opportunities of collaboration. And when we look at what people connect to, even in the brand world, you know, I'm coming from the advertising communication world, people don't connect to logos or brand names. They connect to values, they connect to, you know, the universes that the brands create, they connect to visions of the brands. So what I would definitely want to have in an identity of a person, probably even on the chain, is that set of things, you know? It's not enough to know what is the name of the person. It's not enough to know what is the social number of the person. It's not enough to know where they come from. It's not enough to connect. But when you know the values of the person, when you know the creative footprint of the person, when you know the aspirations of the persons, I hope that would, you know, enable us to connect better and to collaborate better. What I don't want to have on the chain, I think I'll find out along the way, you know?
Well said, well said.
Probably
Shrey,
my profile photo.
yeah. Shrey, as you hear Eugen talk about that, about what putting on chain, what's not putting on chain, how are you dealing with that on the front lines as you build these systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also just want to build on what Eugene just said and give a bit more of the like macro historical context to why this is a problem today. Like, why can't we do this on the internet now, and why is Web3 uniquely positioned to help solve this problem? And so I think from a more like historical context, we previously had this very strong sense of what it meant to be an in-group or out-group tribal sense of networks. We had very strong sense of bonds between a network of people, whether that was through religion, whether it was through actual physical tribes that existed. And over the last 100 years, with the rise of globalization, neoliberalism, liberal democracy, people have started to get this sense of sovereignty, and we've dissolved what it meant to be part of these different types of tribes and networks substantially. And this is also a very good thing when it means that people are being oppressed from these tribes or networks. But we've also lost a bit of what it meant to coordinate with one another, what it meant to actually facilitate cooperation across difference. Like, that difference now is much more fragmented. It's that boundary around who a set of people are is unclear. And so when we tried to solve that problem through the internet, we did it through social media, or we tried to do it through social media, and building bonds at scale to reinstantiate these tribal networks is really hard. And it feels like when I post something on Twitter or other social networks, I'm communicating to this invisible audience who may lack the context on what I'm saying. And so when we think about what we put on chain, I think to your question is, I want to be putting what the appropriate people that need to see this information have the context to readily interpret that information. Because if you lack the context, you may interpret it differently. And a very prime example of this is the presidents or prime ministers of countries don't necessarily hide their private communication channels because they always contain sensitive information or information that's top secret. They hide those private channels because people lack the context to interpret them properly. And so the information you make public is one in which others can interpret, have that context, and interpret it in a way that's more meaningful and not spin it out of proportion. And I think when I think about what will become public on chain, and when we say on chain, even that is a very interesting concept, because you can have data that's on chain but visible to a certain set of people instead of others, will be dependent on this context problem.
It's interesting, Vlad, and as you think about that, one of the things I think we're all interested in is how do you scale something that, you know, Shrey is talking about, and what are some of the ways that we can begin to think about scale and these opportunities about identity and what's seen, what's not?
I think something that is already going on is trying to bring data back to the people, so put it in the control of the people, but by providing access to them in a way that would be verifiable. And then if everything, this Web3 builds into a set of standards that would make it interoperable, then I as a person would decide what to put where and in which context. And for example, I would refer back to the government environment, because that's where we all operate in a way or another. And now with this new normal where everyone works from wherever, and we could be anywhere, and I could be like Shrey here, talking from another country. So you might need to upload those credentials and be able to show them, and your mobility would be greatly enhanced in this case. So again, I think it's about enabling people to make best use of their data that the state holds of them in a manner that is transparent, that is ensures privacy and is secure.
And Eugen, you talk about trust, and you talk about collaboration, you know, and so I think I would love to understand in a Moldovan context what that means to you.
Well, I think, you know, Web 1 enabled us to get access to education. You know, we suddenly got access to a lot of information that we could simply take. You know, we didn't have to order books from Amazon and wait for a couple of months for them to arrive and then try and translate them. So suddenly we have access to information. What Web 2 enabled us is it actually introduced us to the world. You know, it's as if we came to the world and we said, hi, we're Moldovans. What Web 3, I think, is going to do is going to integrate us and integrate us fully in what the world actually is now, you know. It's not anymore going to be for us something foreign, it's going to be very native. What happens today with the help of Web 2, you have Moldovans delivering trainings, you have Moldovans delivering services on the internet, getting paid for it. And I think in Web 3, it's going to become much more native, and we will become a part of the world and integrate even better. So I think that's the effect it's going to have on us.
Yeah, beautiful. And Shrey, as we're going to start to close out here, I want you to kind of, as you hear that about where we're moving towards and working together, going back to that tribal thing you spoke about, which I think is really interesting when you think of the context of how we're beginning to govern on-chain. What are some of the things that you think the audience should be left thinking about as we ponder these questions on the stage?
Yeah, I think I think it is really hard to know right now. These boundaries, like context, is a very hard thing to develop, mostly because in the internet today, we have this very big problem of context collapse. And so when we think about the information we want to make public to others, I think the thing I would be left to design is like, where does it make sense for this information to be shared, and how do we share it with the right network of people in a way that preserves the properties we talked about before, which is like it works with the system, it enables censorship resistance and coercion resistance, and it does so in a private way. I think it's actually quite hard to do all of those simultaneously, and tackling even just one of them correctly and doing it in a way with a network of people is something, is like, of the things you could work on in identity, pick one and try to do it really well, because I don't think we've even done one of those very, very well in decentralized identity spaces. And find people to work on it together, because doing this in open source and doing this in ways, like, of the things that have been really great about the internet and the ways that we've built community have been in these more open source communities or online forums, and they haven't been, at least to my experience or seeing even some of the literature, in broad social networks. They've been in these silos, like, you know, open source and online forums. And so tackling and identifying what is the problem you feel like uniquely interested in working on, and just dive really deep into that.
That's beautifully said. And Vlad, I'd love for you to have the last word, and just say, what is your hope for Moldovans as they encounter Web3 and all the questions we discussed here on the stage and all the things that Eugen beautifully brought up?
The technology is there to embrace them, and I know they will make us proud in the Web3 space for sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shrey. Thank you, Shrey, all the way from Toronto. Thank you, Eugen. Thank you, Vlad. We'll hand it over to...
Thank you, Michael, for a very impressive discussion on the topic of digital identity. I wouldn't think that it is so complex, because now I think of my identity as myself, but then in a few years I might need a digital identity to represent myself. So that's like a very complex topic, and I'm really happy that we managed to touch upon. Next, we are going to meet two founders from to actually use cases from Moldova that use Web3 technology in their products. And first, I would like to welcome, I hope he's here, Alexander Chernovsky, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we are going to switch to the education first, and then we will talk about the earn and move movement that is happening around the world. So for the next presentation, I would like to invite here Alex Danilescu from True Dawn. I hope I presented it correctly and I pronounced it correctly. For the presentation of the True Dawn application website, which is a website, an application based on Web3 that is being used for education. Alex, are you around here somewhere? Great. I was looking for you there. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. I have big emotions, so I'll maybe read sometimes. Yeah. So hi everyone. Appreciate Michael for a great presentation about the Web3 technology, and it's finally here in Moldova we can speak about that and we can share worldwide our technologies. So for decades, humanity is facing a huge problem that affects everything in our lives, from the question, who am I, to why am I doing this? You see, we all want to create new things, to achieve our dreams, but when someone makes decision for us, we lose our individuality. And this is about the educational system. It is broken. And the educators, students, and adults are complaining. Why? Because it is boring, inefficient, disorganized, either offline or online versions of education. So the traditional education is no longer viable. And we think that a new horizon is on the field. And today we need to know how to think critically, how to justify our ideas, and how to create them. So education is humanity's evolutionary engine, and that's why we created True Dawn, to reorganize and recover it. Yeah, please, we'll wait for... and reorganize it. So True Dawn is the only educational platform where users, educators and students can create, learn, and socialize with like-minded communities to raise the quality of knowledge. We will heal the educational system by combining online education with our gamifying learning elements. So how do we solve all these complex problems? With our products, the Tree of Knowledge, the educational social media, and the engaging encyclopedia-like courses. So self-learning is great, but disorienting and hard to use. It should be like choosing a skill based on your interests. In the Tree of Knowledge, you'll be able to visualize visualize a structured tree that helps you navigate, structure, and improve all your skills. So this is our skill tree where all the domains will be contained. So people will always be improving those domains and add always new information, maybe even create new knowledge, because it's absolutely necessary. The educational social media. So our social media will be, first of all, using a decentralized advertising. Which is totally okay with the Web3 concept. So we'll have our feed, we'll have the last course always mentioned on the screen, so I can know where I stopped to continue my learning. Engaging encyclopedia-like format. Yeah, so this is this is how our course will be looking like. If we could please play. it's not playing, but we had actually screens there. So I'll explain really fast. The left corner is for the chapters, so I can always hide and show them. Yeah, oh, finally, thank you. We have a pager, which is always available, so I can switch between my inventory, between my personal diary, and to see actually my character. And for the tokenomics, I'd like to invite my elder brother, Dan, who is the CTO. And yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan, and how should I start? Well, in order for all these systems that we presented to work, they should not be separately, they should work as together as part of one big ecosystem. So our ecosystem is, so we decided that in order to incentivize the system and act as a fuel, we should implement some Web3 economic models in this thing. So by implementing the underlying economy between all the participants, we give, by implementing an underlying economies to all the participants, we give the power and the upgrade the communities need to be self-sustainable and self-developing entities. So the students will earn our token, utility token DON, which will be earned by learning and teaching others, also by sharing expertise and making beautiful courses. These tokens can be spent and hold it in our system to multiply them, so it's called yielding and staking. And also you can spend them on our marketplace, which has different digital goods from the courses itself and different kinds of NFTs. So we can spend, and as a result, all of this, all your progress will be stored in a new token, which is called soulbound token. This soulbound token, maybe you didn't heard about it because it doesn't exist yet. It's an NFT that you cannot transfer or sell to anyone. It's bounded to you, and instead you just build in time your reputation by learning and collecting all these kind of diplomas. This token will reflect all your progress and your knowledge, and it will be will act as your CV in your real life and in the metaverse, where you can show to everyone, and it will be your entry point with a reputation that you build in time. So as a competitors, we'd like to say that our competitors are traditional competitors from Web2. They have only courses and some maybe communities that they kind of try to use. But we have a lot of gamification. We have much better decentralized communities. We have rewards for everything you do, the model learn to earn. And also, we are decentralized. Yes. So thank you for all. This is our team, and we are proud to present our product, and hope you'll learn soon everything. And if you want, you can scan this QR code and see our website. Yeah. Well, I would like, if you go there, you can join also Discord from that site. Thank you all.
Okay, so the next one. I thought I saw him in the room. Alexander, can you please join me on stage? So next I will invite Alexander Chernovsky, who is the CEO of TagMe. TagMe is a widely known company in Moldova for their communication and branding and the videos that they have created. But today I invited Alex to talk about the movement that is called STEPN. Is it correct? This is a move to earn phenomena that is going on around the world, and we have the brand ambassador for Moldova here with us. So please, the stage is yours.
Раз. Я не знаю, где стать, где будет удобнее. I'm sorry, I don't speak English. Сейчас. Можно мою презентацию? В принципе, можно и без презентации. Все здесь есть. Давайте. Я постараюсь рассказать быстро и лаконично за 5 минут, потому что презентация, она не на 5 минут. В прошлый раз я выступал минут 20-30. Но сейчас попытаемся. Вы все красивые. Так, сейчас мы разберемся, как это работает. Это не нужно знать. Move to Yarn. Move to Yarn — это движение в Web3, в крипте в целом и так далее. Это феномен проектов. Move to Yarn. Есть Play to Yarn и Move to Yarn. Вот ребята говорили про NFT, ребята говорят про монеты и так далее. И каждая монета, каждый проект, то есть каждая монета и каждый взаимозаменяемый токен, невзаимозаменяемый токен в плане NFT, либо монета, она привязана к проекту. В этом случае мы поговорим, их много. Это все проекты, которые хоть как-то связаны с Move to Yarn. И топ-3 — это, конечно же, STEPN номер 1, Гинопец, был Волкин, Дефи, но сейчас медвежий рынок, те, которые занимаются проектом, вообще криптой, они понимают, о чем речь. Сейчас очень большая просадка, и поэтому проекты, как бы даже феномен, как STEPN, это феномен. Сейчас он переживает не лучшие времена. Что такое NFT, я буду пропускать. Здесь большая часть людей знают, что такое блокчейн и почему этот стик так медленно работает. Тоже все знают. Мы будем говорить конкретно про STEPN. Что такое STEPN? Это приложение на блокчейне, потому что приложения, которые связаны с ходьбой, с бегом, с физическими нагрузками, их очень много. Но STEPN — это первые ребята, которые в ноябре их АМУ слушали примерно 212 человек, а в апреле они закрыли квартал на 250 миллионов долларов чистой прибыли. Причем, что началась медвежка примерно вот в апреле. Суть проекта. Ты гуляешь, майнишь монеты, зарабатываешь. Меняешь их на стейблкоин, USDT, либо в Solana и так далее. Получилось так, что... Ну нет, я вообще должен быть в асиксах, потому что они как бы партнеры. Но я сегодня не в асиксах. Как выглядит программа? Вот есть условно 3 кроссовка, есть common, uncommon, у них разная рарность, есть rar и эпики. И в данном случае есть кроссовки с разными характеристиками, от этого зависит цена. Построен проект на системе Solana, продаются также в Solana, и у них пик — это апрель, март, когда ты мог ходить и в течение 2-3 часов зарабатывать примерно 1500-2000 долларов. Многим кажется это феноменом, но это действительно так. Вот я проговорил про рарность. Вот сейчас, к примеру, крипта настолько упала, что можно купить анкоммоны за 5 анкоммонов, как раньше покупали Волкин. Я зашел в проект примерно в начале апреля. И мы здесь делали ивенты, продвигали, в принципе, здоровый образ жизни. За это еще получаешь монеты. И нам дали амбассадорку. Мне и мой коллега, его, кстати, нету, я забыл его пригласить, Евгений. Мы организовали комьюнити Степан МД. Сейчас там больше 250 человек, активно людей, которые активно продвигают проект. Они до сих пор, даже если есть просадка, и ты уже не зарабатываешь, ну, раньше, допустим, в день $1000, сейчас $4 в лучшем случае, чтобы вы понимали разницу. Мы продолжаем развивать NFT, мы продолжаем развивать сам проект. Также компания Tegmi, к примеру, мы развиваем несколько наших проектов. Я вот вижу здесь очень много знакомых лиц, которые развивают NFT-проекты, и мы где-то можем рисовать, где-то мы сами даже делали свои коллекции NFT, я рассказывал, чтобы сделать в помощь Украине, но тогда мы не знали, что это нужно комьюнити, а потом продавать. Мы сделали крутые картинки, решили заняться благими делами, а оно не пошло. Сейчас я пропущу много, потому что очень много информации. Как работает программа? Это внутренний интерфейс. Есть GPS, есть акселерометр. Человек ходит, бегает, потому что есть волкер, это ходьба до 6 километров. Джоггер — это легкий бег трусцой, это примерно вот так. И раннеры — это бег. К сожалению, я спортсмен, но не настолько, поэтому я никогда не бегал. Ребята худеют и зарабатывают деньги. Я пока хожу, гуляю с сыном и зарабатывал ему на, скорее всего, его какой-то кошелек, связанный с криптой на будущее. Что советую всем здесь делать. Программа считывает шаги, считывает скорость и идет майнинг токена. Когда-то мы должны были компьютерами майнить тот же биткоин, потом видеокарты. Сейчас Web3 позволяет играть за компьютером, у кого какие хобби, и майнить, либо двигаться и майнить. Здесь разная механика. Чтобы было интересно, потому что вообще Степан, почему феномен, сейчас лирическое отступление, активных пользователей в день 1 миллион. Больше 1 миллиона даже в медвежьей просадке. И 46% это почти половина. Вы можете себе представить, никогда не были знакомы с криптой. То есть ребята как минимум сделали феномен, когда вот я купил своей сестре, купил своей маме кроссовок и так далее. И я объяснил, что можно сейчас зарабатывать так, можно быть здоровыми, и Web3 это ближайшее будущее, 5-7 лет. И сейчас я считаю, что мы примерно в последнем вагоне. То есть когда-то, лет 10 назад, сейчас вот кто пользуется активно криптой, это примерно как 10 лет назад интернетом. Мы все прекрасно понимаем, что сейчас интернет, и вот то же самое будет с криптой. Гемы — это атрибуты, которые помогают выигрывать время, выигрывать скорость и выигрывать, скорее всего, влиять положительно на заработок. Все знают, кто такие секвойя. Очень много скамных проектов, все знают, что такое скам, и я не желаю никому оказаться в западне мошенников. А крипта — это 85% мошенников. Я думаю, что даже целых 90%, но я оптимистичен в этом плане. Секвойя. Люди, которые занимаются, в принципе, фондами, либо какими-то мероприятиями, либо вообще финансовой деятельностью, они понимают, что это один из самых очень крупных фондов, которые стали инвестировать в NFT и в криптопроекты, потому что за этим будущее. Они инвестировали в Степан. Обычно секвойя — это те ребята, которые подошли вот так, сидел Стив Джобс, и они подошли: парень, мне кажется, ты очень способный. Они дали ему денег. Илон Маск, SpaceX и так далее — это инвесторы Sequoia. Сейчас я покажу. Здесь, по-моему, у меня есть слайд. Вот, это все, что вы видите, чем вы пользуетесь в интернете, это инвесторы Sequoia. Ребята, где работает очень большой штаб аналитиков, они понимают, какие проекты, скорее всего, смогут менять мир, потому что любой классный проект, он сначала меняет что-то, меняет людей, меняет в целом какую-то индустрию, а потом это заработок и прочее, это второстепенное. Поэтому они поверили. Они инвестировали в PayPal, они инвестировали в Google, в NVIDIA и так далее. Также этим занимается Binance. все знают про биржу, что такое Binance, все знают, что у них есть лаборатория Binance Lab, которая также инвестирует в Move to Earn, либо Play to Earn проекты. И ребята, кстати, это тоже те, кто подошли к Sequoia. И Binance — это тоже результат инвестиций и работы команды Sequoia. Вот, кстати. Я говорю, он медленно работает. Потому что в Stepan есть несколько, для того, чтобы работать, я перефразирую, работать с разной аудиторией, есть сеть. Первое — это материнская сеть, это Solana. Второе — это BSK, это второй партнер был официально признан Binance. И потому что есть люди, которые делают очень много транзакций, работают в этой сети. Потом для того, чтобы проект стал уровня классического NFT, когда мы говорим про обезьян, когда мы говорим про панков, это эфир, сеть эфира. И третья сеть — это была эфир для того, чтобы люди, которые владеют панками, владеют обезьянами, получили в подарок по кроссовку и развивали благодаря своей аудитории проект. Что такое разлог? Есть у каждого проекта токеномика. Я не буду рассказывать детали, потому что уже до меня здесь говорили очень много. Я пил кофе, не вдавался в подробности, но я уверен, что так и было. Здесь то же самое. Есть экосистема, есть инвесторы, есть ребята, которые покупали кроссовок один примерно за 1800 евро. Сейчас за 1800 можно купить целую ферму. И они инвестировали в проект. И чем крута сеть эфир, это проект, наверное, связан с смарт-контрактами. Когда вот, в принципе, в будущем профессия юриста, она исчезнет, потому что смарт-контракт — это сильнее, чем любой другой юрист, который он взяточник, он мошенник и так далее, потому что это человеческий фактор. Здесь то же самое. Вот разлог, монета, которая привязана к проекту, это ГМТ. Сейчас еще не майнится ГМТ. Есть две монеты. ГСТ — это внутриигровая монета, и ГМТ — это который мы ожидаем. Сейчас у ГМТ есть определенное количество эмиссий, и нужно сжечь 98,52%. То есть мы ГМТ будем фармить. Это в принципе зачем был создан этот проект. Примерно через 2 недели. Я советую покупать кроссовки на комфорт и развивать комфорт. Далее детально я могу объяснить, в чем разница параметров. Разлог будет в апреле 2023 года. Четко показано, какие доли и для чего, и какие монеты кому уходят. ГМТ сейчас работают, Stepan работают с Adidas и так далее, чтобы можно было прийти в магазин и либо в сэндбоксе в метавселенной купить за ГМТ кроссовки и тебе высылают реальные, либо ты приходишь в магазин и покупаешь. И я, к сожалению, не в асиксах, но когда я был в прошлый раз, это первая их коллаборация с спортивной одеждой либо обувью, и я купил асиксы у нас здесь за крипту. Вот я на Степане заработал на кроссовки и купил их здесь. Ну, правда, никто не заметил, пришлось мне акцентировать вот так внимание, но в целом мы живем на пороге, когда вы можете, вот есть у Binance есть карточка, виза обычная, приходишь, ты прошелся и заработал себе на кофе, заказал кофе, угостил друзей. Это же круто. Инвестиция, окупаемость, заработок. К сожалению, из-за того, что сейчас медвежий рынок и очень много, вот плюс большой Степана, что 46% он познакомил людей с криптой. В принципе, это развитие, это очень большой шаг. Маленький шаг для Степана и большой шаг для человечества. Но также эти люди пришли туда не развивать Web3, а пришли заработать. И, следовательно, они влияют отрицательно на токеномику. Они сливают все в стакан, продают монеты, проект падает. Ну, у всего есть плюсы, у всего есть минусы. И вот, к примеру, когда спустя, получается, месяц-полтора, 2 миллиона человек. Я не знаю, если есть... Нет, я знаю. В проекте Web3 нету ни одного проекта, который так быстро бы развивался. Новые пользователи плюс старые бы, находились бы в экосистеме. Поэтому вот Stepan — это те для ребят юных, потому что мы развиваем свою коллекцию. Мы сейчас работаем с ребятами из Кишинева, которые рисуют также коллекцию, делают свой смарт-контракт, делают свою монету, и мы помогаем им отрисовывать, разрабатываем визуальную часть, потому что лого и брендинг — это круто, маркетинг — это классно, но мы стараемся идти в ногу со временем, потому что завтра это вот это завтра. И этот проект, он должен вдохновлять наших ребят, он должен вдохновлять ребят из Кишинева, потому что я считаю, что у нас очень много классных и талантливых моих коллег. И сейчас вот это первые коллаборации, когда идет бренд одежды, бренд обуви, им связаны со спортом, с движением, и когда в коллаборации работают несколько сильных брендов, тогда происходит, не хотел сказать муфтуйорн, происходит тот самый эпик, потому что обмен аудиторией, обмен опытом, и это позволяет развивать любой другой проект, любой продукт, потому что муфтуйорн и вообще Web3 для сегодняшнего дня это еще что-то загадочное. Если вы подойдете на улице вот сейчас на территории ГОСа и думаю, что нет, а вот за территорией ГОСа спросите, что ты думаешь о криптовалюте, вам, скорее всего, скажут, что это обман, скам и куча пи. Вот сейчас бы меня пикали здесь, потому что очень много матерных слов. Я думаю, что такие люди, они по-своему правы. Я не знаю, тут, наверное, слайд закончился. Да. Я закончу свою мысль. Благодарю за внимание. Я закончу тем, что мы должны помогать таким людям понимать это. Они так говорят лишь потому, что они не в среде. Мы с вами, я, вы и оператор, и этот экран — это те, которые могут поменять завтрашний мир. И всем вива и какао. Спасибо большое за внимание.
So, is it working? Yes. Спасибо большое, Alexander. Thank you very much for the inspiring presentations and the panel that we had. Thank you for all the speakers. I really appreciated you have joined us. So we kind of got to the final part of our event, the closing remarks. And I would like to say that I hope this is not the first, I mean, it is the first, but I hope it is not the last, this type of an event that we are exploring different types of things that are not happening yet in Moldova, but for sure in a few years, it will happen. So I don't want to be in the last wagon of the train, as Alexander mentioned. I want to be closer to what is happening and to all the trends. And I hope you agree with me. So let's build this community together. Maybe when we can do something else together after this event. So we invite you all for a networking event after this official part is closed. But also, I would like to invite you to follow us on the next days, because we have a Web3 hackathon going on, starting on Friday at 4 p.m. and going on till Sunday. And on Sunday, we'll have here the final presentation pitches from the teams. So I hope we will have great ideas, great teams that will present their work for the 48 hours that they have to build their own Web3 generated idea. So please, let's talk in the lobby and exchange ideas. We have the speakers with us. Let's approach them and maybe see you soon at another Web3 community event. Thank you.